And welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. Tonight, special guest, my good friend, Anthony Arditti of the Knights of Christendom. He comes in to talk to us about what's going on with Israel, with Iran. It's been the hot story all weekend. Anthony, my friend, so many emotions over this bombing of Iran, these supposed nuclear sites. MAGA feels betrayed. The neocons are celebrating a great victory, declaring that Trump is now a hero, saved all of our lives because he's been able to disable the Iranian regime's, I guess, nuclear program. Of course, they believe in this extremist religious ideology over there, the 12th Imam, where they just want to bring about Armageddon to fulfill their prophecy over there. So we have to make sure they don't get it. Our greatest ally, of course, Israel, has been pushing us to go in there for the past 30 years, telling us, well, they got weeks before they get the bomb. They've been saying that for 30 years. But for my part here, and I'm trying to deal with this, and I kind of feel for the MAGA people who put their trust as one of the leading campaign issues for Donald Trump all the way to the 2024 election was no more foreign wars. He seemed to cross that line. Now I get it. There's more nuance to this. If there is an impending threat from Iran, that's something we got to consider. But too many people are looking back at the Iraq War, and they don't trust the information they're being given right now, Anthony.
Yeah, there's a large portion of Generation X and also the Zoomers, and probably a lot of millennials as well, that have been completely betrayed. They voted for Trump, as you said, thinking he was going to keep us out of war. And everybody was concerned when he took that money from Adelson because of the situation there with Israel and what she wanted in terms of Gaza. But and where that could lead. And so this is the catalyst for events that have been war gamed out. And we really didn't need to see this. This was, of course, Trump came out and declared victory right away, uh, very short. And it reminded me of the moment where George Bush stood on the aircraft carrier back when my brother was in Iraq and, declared victory. And of course, it was nowhere near a victory. And so this is just the beginning. That probably calmed down markets. The futures weren't looking terrible last time I checked, but that ultimately I think is what that was about, was just to calm people. But if the markets were savvy and if the American people were savvy to what this means in terms of war games and what SOCOM and other organizations have released unclassified in terms of what bombing Iran would do when they run this war game over and over again,
Mhm.
the markets would be in the gutter right now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here's the arguments I'm hearing from the neocons. They bomb these bunkers. Um, they're not sure if they got all the way down to the bottom with the 30,000 pound bunker buster bombs, but just the fact that those bombs cannot get all the way to the bottom of that thing proves, or at least is good evidence, that the Iranians had or were enriching the uranium they needed to manufacture the bomb. Because why would you need a bunker that deep, Anthony?
Yeah, it's really irrelevant because Iran immediately, it was before Trump ever came out and made his statement. Iran was already putting out on social media that they had moved everything. And of course, I mean, this was telegraphed like back in March, and they've known for years that the United States was coming. I mean, it's been 20, 25 years of, like you said, oh no, Iran's going to get the nuke tomorrow. So of course they're going to move their material. And it's not as if they couldn't do that because those bunker busters, sure, they can hit where the major sites are, but I guarantee you there are tunnel networks all over the place in
Yeah,
Iran.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that terrain is incredible. So, I mean, it's an immediate failure for Trump in terms of anything he was trying to, and the neocons, in my opinion, in terms of anything they were trying to accomplish by doing this. And of course, the end goal for Israel is regime change. You notice today the goalposts moved, and
Yeah.
now they're talking about regime change.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's so much, what appears to me at least, to be flip-flopping by the president right now. He says one thing, we're not going to do this. And then the very next day, he seems to do the thing he just said he wasn't going to do. And so I'm a little bit confused. Yesterday, he was saying no regime change. Today, he puts out a tweet or next post, whatever you want to call it, that says, maybe we're thinking about regime change. He's kind of hinting at it. You know, Anthony, I want to like President Trump. I really do. But this one here is a tough one to swallow because, listen, we all remember the Iraq War. At least I do. I remember it vividly. I remember that day when the invasion started, watching Fox News, being all pumped up, hyped up at the time. I was a young conservative, like, yeah, we're gonna get the bad guys. We're gonna go, save the world from nuclear disaster. Because after the stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction were not found, the Republican Party, or should I say, really, the old conservative movement, like that Rush Limbaugh wing, it died after 2008 because it led to the
Yeah.
empowering of Barack Obama in 2008, the 8 years of radicalization where the left was able to capture all the institutions. It's when we got gay marriage. It's when we got a lot of the fiscal things that ruined the nation. And then by the time it gets to 2016 and Trump comes around, that old Republican Party that was pro-life and anti-gay marriage was now pro-gay marriage. And now they're apparently not even fighting abortion anymore. That Iraq war destroyed the conservative movement, in my opinion. And now we have what we call a populist president in Trump that kind of gets to decide what conservatism is now in America. And so I guess my point to all of this is we went through the Iraq thing. They said, trust us. There wasn't, those stockpiles. Now we're here in Iran. It's kind of like, trust us 2.0, bro. Just trust us.
Well, yeah,
This time we're not lying.
yeah,
That's what it feels like.
yeah. It's trust me, bro, all over again, and it doesn't work. In fact, Trump is trying to use the same rhetoric that he used as a populist candidate, except now as a neocon. And he doesn't realize how bad that looks and how much it's making the majority of his base that isn't in the
Yeah.
boomer crowd, like how angry they are.
Yeah.
Like he has no idea what he's done. He thinks he's going to get a W out of this, and he's not, as far as that goes.
Yeah. Well, can I just add to that real quick,
Yeah, go
Andrew?
ahead.
I mean,
Yeah.
you got the Megan McCain's, the Lindsey Graham's, the Mark Levin's partying up, celebrating. These are all the people that MAGA was fighting within the party to get a hold of the party from the neocons. And he's given a victory to the very people who were never MAGA in the first place. It's the oddest thing right now.
Yeah, I mean, you could see the connections, right? Like when I voted for Trump, I voted for him thinking, okay, I see the money connections that he has. I'm not stupid. I see some other things that have been going on. It looks like this could be a neocon regime forming around him, and he's the anointed one, and he's going to do what Israel says to do. That was always in the back of my mind. It was always like a 50-50 shot for me. But I knew that like I had to take that shot because if he was a true populist, my hope was that he would raise the middle finger to them and do what needed to
Right.
be done. We see we didn't get that Trump. And it's affected me to such a degree after 30 years of nonstop war in the Middle East, really longer than 30 years, going back to when I was like 12 with the first
Yeah.
invasion, you know, and then getting older, and then my brother going off to war and my friends going off to war and watching how that destroyed people, the suicide rate, his buddies that didn't come back after being deployed 3, 4 times. Like this country didn't give a shit about the vets. Excuse my language. I know this is probably a family show, but I get upset when I think about that, right? And now you expect us to go do this all over again. Well, guess what? You're not getting my sons. That's not happening.
No.
And the Republican Party is no longer going to have my support. Neither is the Democratic Party, because we can see that it's both two wings on the same bird. And like you said earlier, they're walking back abortion, right? They don't want to end abortion anymore in the Republican Party. They want to find a compromise. Trump was talking about that before he was elected. That disturbed me and made me very angry right away. But then if you look at it in truth, you look at the nuance. What's the nuance? Well, babies in utero are the most innocent life. Check. Okay. What makes them the most innocent? It's the fact that they are not hitting the age, they're not at the age of reason. Well, guess what? We're dropping bombs, or in Israel is, and we're helping Israel. We helped Israel drop bombs and wipe out Gaza. And there's a lot of innocent children that never hit the age of reason there either. And we slaughtered them. So where's the lesser of two evils at this point? Because
Yeah.
each regime that comes into our government, we get no difference as Catholics. There's no more lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I mean, there's another argument out there, Anthony, that by attacking Iran and kicking their butt, I guess you could say, we weaken Russia, who's allied with Iran. Obviously, we got that war going on in Ukraine over there still. Many are really passionate for the Ukraine side of the war. They want to put the pressure on Putin over there. And
Yeah,
again, taking out Iran, you just weaken the alliance on that side of the world. What are your thoughts on that?
Putin has not been hurt by this war, and he won't be hurt by us overextending ourselves in Iran. He's not overextending himself. He's very focused. He's got one goal. He's not all over the world,
Yeah.
and they're outproducing us, and the weapon systems that they need to counter what we do, and they can provide them to Iran, and they already have been since 2016. The different, I think they're THAAD missile systems, and there are other ones. No, no, no. I think I'm thinking about the other. I can't remember. But in any case, they're cheaper. It's cheaper for Russia to deal with this, and they're outproducing us in that regard as well. So when it comes to defense, it's cheaper. And yeah, Iran doesn't have an air force to speak of, but they can keep hitting Israel. They can level Israel, and they can hit us. They can hit our military bases.
Yeah.
So and Frank, the bottom line is this, okay? When you look at releases from CENTCOM back in 2019, or things that were conducted back in 2006 that were declassified in 2019, when you look at the ramifications for this, or you look at the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command, TRADOC, I just want to give everybody these sources because this is not me just making this up, okay? And this is a big deal because this has ramifications for what Trump has decided to do and also for what we believe as Catholics, okay? That they've done the war game studies on this, and overwhelmingly, uh, it comes out to Russia and China getting involved. World War III, it's a 20 to 40% probability. A 20 to 40% probability of World War III, of escalation,
Yeah.
with over 100 million casualties. And you're talking about nuclear winter. You're talking about the end of the species.
Yeah.
This is so when you go to look at Catholic moral doctrine on just warfare theory, right away, this doesn't even meet it. Like this action that Trump took when they war gamed this stuff out, you tell me, is that percentage something you want to risk? A 20 to 40% chance of over a million casualties and possibly the end of humanity?
Yeah, there's so much there that needs to be unraveled. First of all, let's go back to Russia and China. they're both closed societies. And
Yeah.
while we champion ourselves for our freedoms, those freedoms that we champion in the abstract come as sort of a double-edged sword. Russia, yes, they got their issues in Ukraine. From what I understand, it's a very difficult war over there. But because they haven't stretched themselves all over the world, neither is China. When's the last time you heard China going to war somewhere? They're preparing for war. They're building a
Right.
military. They're
Their
not,
navy is enormous. Yeah.
yeah, they're not using a whole lot of resources all over the world. And
No.
here we are, as usual, for the past since the end of World War II, going all over the globe, using up resources. Our national debt is out of control. And again, let's just take the argument for a second. Let's say Iran has the bomb. Okay. One, what does natural law kind of dictate? What is the decision there? And does it matter if we have the accurate information or not? Because again, in Iraq, we took certain people's words. A lot of it was Israeli intelligence. We took their word on it for Iraq, and it turned out not to be true. But again, if they don't have it, we just attack an innocent nation. Now, I'm not saying Iran is innocent. I understand why Iran would like to acquire a nuke so they can control their own region. It seems like to me that everybody that's been a challenge or an enemy of Israel in the Middle East has gone down over the past 50 years, and Iran's got to be looking to say, wait a minute, are we next, Anthony?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And, you know, the scenario's premise of bombing based on possible nuclear war. Okay. In that scenario, with this act, right? Trump dropping the bomb on these facilities, these bunker busters, and knowing what the war games have shown us, uh, this doesn't meet natural law. When you look up in the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and this is based on Catholic doctrine as well, there's an argument that preemption based on conjecture rather than imminent aggression lacks moral grounding. Okay, so there was no threat of imminent aggression. They don't have the bomb. They never threatened to use the bomb. We've got intelligence that's accurate? Maybe. I mean, back in March, what were we being told back in March
Yeah,
by what's her
Tulsi
name?
Gabbard.
Yeah,
Tulsi,
Tulsi.
yeah,
She said no, right? We didn't have to worry about this. And now suddenly she changes her tune the day before the bombing. She didn't change her tune to a large degree. It was mitigated, it was adjusted, but it was
yeah,
adjusted and tweaked just enough so they could do this. And so anyway, uh, and then there's the Catholic Conscience article from 2022, which basically says you have to wonder if just warfare theory, according to just warfare theory in the nuclear age, if you could ever meet the criteria to do that, to just, just to stop some country from getting a nuclear weapon, is it worth what's the argument for potentially drawing all these other countries into nuclear exchange because they're allied with one of these countries, So, and the bishops' conference had something to say about that too. Back in when was that? Was it 81? No, it was 83. It was the Catholic bishops' pastoral letter, the challenge of peace. And what they said is they talked about nuclear problems there, and they had extreme skepticism about preemptive strategies because it could destabilize things rather than stabilize them. So you have
sure.
the U.S. Bishops' Conference, you've got the military itself and their assessments that this thing could lead to all-out nuclear war.
Yeah, I know. I know. This is the great fear and how to handle a post-liberal world, post-enlightenment world that's lost all of its sense of morality. It's rejected the natural law, and all these weapons that have the potential to destroy the world, human civilization, is a byproduct of that liberal world, and
Yeah.
it shows you how we've lost our sense of morality. Um, you know, you know. with our technology, it's gone too far. And in many ways now, it's a threat to the entire world. And so that's the frustrating part. Because listen, I'll be honest, these are complicated questions. Because if you do have a regime that's radical, and not only radical, but they're angry because they've been dealing with this other neighbor that's close to them since 1948. And this neighbor since 1948, with the help of America, has been getting all the victories. They got to be terribly frustrated. There's a long history there. It's like when I talk to people that are Israeli defenders, they say, "Oh well, October 7th, fine. October 7th was horrible, without a doubt, but that history goes back for another 50, 60 years. You can't forget that, and unless you unravel all of that, it's very difficult just to pick one moment in time. And so I guess for me, Anthony, at the end of the day, I struggle with what is the right move here. What is the right move? But
Well,
I go back to the Iraq War. They bullshitted us, or at
yeah,
least bad intelligence, right? Pick your poison. It's the same thing to me.
the right has lost its way completely because the neocons were just communists that came into the
Yeah,
party. That's
they
all
were.
this is, and and it's an extension of of constant conflict, and that's something that international communism was about. So you get this weird merger of like pro-America doctrine with really communist values when it comes to constant revolution and war, right? Because what we're trying to, what the hybrid of this is to interject liberalism into all
Yeah.
these countries and democracy. And of course, like you point out, we've been lied to. As far as October 7th goes, and conservatives pointing to that as like some kind of big catalyst, uh, even the Jerusalem Post and other sources in Israeli media have pointed out that it looks like the IDF stood down. Not even looked like they had to have. It's just a logical
Yeah.
conclusion. Their intelligence network is too great. They moved assets away. That was documented. So it looks like they knew where this was going to take place and they wanted it to take place. And then you had somewhere between 6 or more hours. I've heard almost a whole day and some from some
Yeah.
sources where
Yeah.
they didn't IDF didn't stop this attack. So this and by the way, I just want to piggyback off this because there were Catholics, fellow Catholics online, I want not name them, some of them well known, that were saying this wasn't genocide, and they were telling me on X that I was incorrect in calling it genocide, that that's an extreme and I talked about this once before on Knights of Christendom. If you all want to go over there and look at Knights of Christendom, I've talked about this before. So I'll keep this very brief. But so when you look at genocide, there's 5 things you have to look at. Number one, you have to look at intent. Was the intent there? Was there a specific intent to destroy in whole or part this group of people? Yes. I'll tell you why. Because not 3 months after this attack started, they gave oil and gas contracts out. Israel did for Gaza to oil corporations. It takes longer than 3 months to get contracts like that together and everybody to know who's going to be a part of this. They had it done like that. So you had that, and then you had the language they were using prior, which was dehumanizing. Even Pope Francis talked about that. I was disgusted by it. I couldn't believe what they were saying. And I knew just by the language that was coming out of the Israeli regime that they were going to wipe those people out. Uh, is it a protected group? Yeah, they were a protected group of people. And really, a protected group doesn't even matter. That's a secular
Yeah.
definition. Uh, so, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, inflicting conditions to destroy the group physically. They're starving them out. They're hitting them with bombs. They go to sites to get food. They're hit again. Uh, they're starving them out. So, are there verifiable facts? Yes, there's patterns. There's been policies. There's been statements. There have been courts in the world that have called it genocide.
Yeah.
And even the this Israeli historian, I can't remember his name right now, very well known. He
Yeah.
has said we have to call it genocide. There's no denying it at this point. And then you look at the scale. Did it affect a substantial part of the group? Yes, it did. Gaza's
Yeah.
been leveled. So, right there, it meets the definition for genocide. It's just a matter of Catholics not being comfortable The
Yeah,
other, this is an issue, Frank. This is a big issue because honestly, they're no different than the left cats that want to have illegal abortion.
yeah,
It's disgusting. And it's all for this heresy of Americanism, and it has to stop with Catholics.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
Repent, wake up.
Going back real quickly to the October 7th issue,
Yeah, sorry.
Charlie Kirk was on the PBD podcast, right? David Paul, I don't know what his name is. I keep forgetting, but he's a popular YouTube channel guy, kind of libertarian-esque, rightish kind of a guy. Charlie
Yeah,
Kirk was invited on there, and he was asked about October 7th. And listen, Charlie Kirk is a Zionist, hardcore Zionist. There's no doubt about it. Big Israeli defender, and he says, "Listen, I've been to the Holy Land a bunch of times. I just don't know how that attack could have been pulled off." I mean, they got so much security, so many cameras, so many guards. You can't walk 10 feet without a soldier holding, some kid holding a machine gun for the IDF. And it's really interesting to hear Kirk say that of all people because he just couldn't fathom it. But at the same time, what do you do? Do we go down the 9/11 path and go down the conspiracy path? You got to prove that kind of a thing, right? And that's not just to say not to talk about 9/11 per se, but it's such a strange thing to hear a guy like Kirk say that who's such a staunch defender. Now, this leads to another issue we you just brought up too, and that is Muslims, right? You bring up the
yeah,
issue of genocide. What's happened in Gaza looks horrific to me. It's so funny because I guess one of the ballistic missiles that Iran shot a couple of days ago hit a hospital, and the entire media just was in an uproar because they targeted a hospital. Have you seen what they did to the hospitals in Gaza? What the Israelis did? They leveled all of them. There was one left, and they bombed it recently.
yeah.
They're all gone over there. And so the double standards in media are quite obvious over here, but it leads to another fundamental fact and a disturbing thing that I continue to see. I don't think this is from Catholics, more from Protestants. And that is, looking at that situation with Gaza, because apparently they've aligned with Hamas or they voted Hamas in, they effectively don't deserve any mercy. And in many ways, they're being treated very unhuman like. They've lost their dignity because of that choice of that vote. And many Protestants are saying, listen, screw the Palestinians. They're all a bunch of animals. Wipe them all out. That's the attitude that I've seen online from Protestants, Anthony.
It's the same rhetoric that Israel was using prior to doing it.
Yeah.
It's the same rhetoric. They're just as genocidal as Israel. And these are people that are sitting on their couches, probably, 500 pounds, and just like they're not gonna go fight. Are
Yeah.
they going? Who's going?
Yeah.
I'm sure their kids aren't going.
Yeah.
Anybody who has kids that are military age, like you and I, we have an awareness of what this stuff means. I'm perfectly willing to send my boys off to war if it meets just warfare doctrine and this
Yeah.
country is in danger. I am not willing. Not only am I not willing, I'm not going to let my boys commit a mortal sin by fighting in an unjust war. This complacency among Catholics has to stop. The support of the two-party system has to stop. It is clear that Israel is controlling both sides, whether it was the Biden regime or now the Trump regime.
Yeah. Let's talk about APAC. Obviously, we all saw that disastrous of an interview that Senator Ted Cruz did with Tucker Carlson. And when he was questioned about all the APAC money coming in, you could see Ted Cruz fidgeting and moving in the seat and getting very, very uncomfortable. Oh, I almost felt for him, right? And listen,
Yeah.
I don't hate Ted Cruz, right? Just like I don't hate President Trump in any kind of way. But when he was questioned about that, there were so many blunders he made in that interview. But is this, listen, you listen to a guy like Nick Fuentes over on X, he would tell you the entire Republican Party is bought out ultimately by Israel through AIPAC. Um, with the exception of maybe Congressman Massey and Congressman, or should I say, Senator Rand Paul, excuse me. And it's interesting, they're both kind of tend to be libertarian-esque, which I'm not a big fan of libertarianism, but I respect them. They got some interesting ideas. And both this congressman and the senator have recently been attacked by the regime because they're not going along. The excuse is they're not voting for the big beautiful bill because of all the pork and all the extra spending and the debt and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But my suspicion is if the APAC connection is true, that it's really they're not supporting Israel and it's becoming a problem, and APAC wants them both out of there. That's how I kind of see that.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's and the fact that it's so synchronized, and again, you see Trump really changing his rhetoric. He's again, there's a huge segment of his base. I would guess it might very well be the majority of his base, even if it's a slight majority that is not going to like this. I don't think they understand how fed up the American people
Yeah,
are
yeah,
and that we see through this. Like I read his tweet about this, right? About Massey, and he calls him little Rand Paul Jr.,
yeah.
something like that, being very demeaning. And it's like, you know what? That stuff works for the people that got you into office when it's from a populist perspective. When you start going against the very ideals that we put you in there to represent, not coming off the way you think.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Listen, one more question about Senator Ted Cruz here.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
he came out and basically said that he supports this war effort. He came in to public office as one of Israel's biggest defenders, and he says primarily that he defends Israel because the Bible says that those that bless Israel will be blessed by God. We've talked about the Protestants and dispensationalism. It sure sounded like to me that the senator was implying that his position is that he supports Israel because of Protestant eschatology. How big of a problem is this, Anthony?
It's a huge problem.
Yeah,
So Cruz just primary, he's done. Cruz is done. The Republicans are done in the midterms, and Trump is going to be a lame duck. That's what they've just set up for themselves. And it's over. It's over. And I would say that in terms of the theological question, I think I heard Tucker Carlson say something about like I understand if he's a Baptist or something like this, but I believe that last time I looked anyway, and this was years ago, Ted Cruz belongs to the Seventh Day Adventists, and they are very kind of Israel oriented, very pro
um,
Israel, very into that whole not so much covenant theology as the theology of kind of like the second coming in terms of we got to get we got to get Christ back on the throne. We want the 1,000-year reign of peace, which of course is actually going to be the Antichrist. This is down here in Texas near me. I've seen these places. They're pretty big outside, I believe, somewhere outside of Maypearl. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if the guy that sent the red heifers here from Texas too over to Israel to renew the temple sacrifice, like the abomination of desolation, right?
yeah, I
I
know, I
wouldn't be
know.
surprised if he's a Seventh Day as well, or some other version of it. I think there are some Baptists that believe in that, but I don't know if every Baptist segment exactly believes the same thing. I haven't done a deep dive on that.
I guess I find it so disturbing what Senator Ted Cruz said about that because you're effectively talking about one of the great errors of sola scriptura.
Yeah,
And the Schofield Bible, the history behind that, and certain people being bought off behind the scenes to put together a Bible that was erroneous to begin with, at least in this theory and the footnotes, right? And the idea that many of our senators and congressmen from the South, all beholden to Republican evangelical voters that believe in this dispensationalism, is truly disturbing. Listen, when John F. Kennedy was elected, he had to swear an oath that he wasn't going to serve the Pope. And yet now we have Protestants through their dispensationalism, sola scriptura crap that are now taking us to war. I mean, this is outrageous, Anthony, isn't it not? I mean, shouldn't we be
yeah.
outraged at this point?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think Gen Z is. And let me tell you something. I've I've been spending time with Gen Z online,
Right,
like in chats and stuff, not just like voice chats, not just these shows where you tune in, you watch Nick Fuentes or something, and there's a bunch
right.
of them in there and they're all in the chat. And you're like, yeah, maybe some of them are bots or whatever. Their language has changed, Frank.
Yeah, I
And
know.
if you think that these young men are anything like the young men in America prior to this, you are gravely mistaken.
Yeah,
And they are not going to put up with this crap. And they do not care much of what they say. They don't care about any kind of
yeah.
political correctness or anything like that. They do not
No,
care. And
I
they are pissed about all this.
I've seen it too. This generation is different. They're flocking to the Catholic Church, a lot of them,
Yeah.
and they don't care about political correctness. They don't care about the racial divisions. They don't care about the Zionist issue, the Israel issue. This generation doesn't care. And in many ways, I understand it because I think the boomer generation and my Gen X generation, we took advantage of the treasury. Let's be honest here, is what we did. And we made the world better for ourselves and we ran up a bunch of debt. You got a bunch of kids now, Gen Z, they can't buy a house. They can't get married because feminism has destroyed womanhood. They can't start a family. They're massively in debt because of healthcare and housing and student loans. They really have nothing to lose. They're angry. They're frustrated. They believe they've been screwed by previous generations. And quite frankly, Anthony, it's hard to argue against that. What we've done simply on the economic front, never mind the moral front where we failed to pass on the faith to them, to give them a vibrant culture and a rich faith. On the economic front, they've been completely screwed by all the printing of money for the past 5 decades. And now these kids, they have nothing to lose, man. They're just pissed.
Yeah, to be fair, you know, I'm 45 now. I guess this was back maybe when I was around 27, 26. It was the very beginning of the Tea Party movement. My brother had been in Iraq. I had researched why we were there, and I had come to the conclusion that it was because Saddam Hussein had dropped the dollar. And of course, as the backing of the currency backing oil over there and basically trade, and he was going to the euro. Well, that wasn't a coincidence. We saw the same thing with Gaddafi in Libya. We
Yeah.
saw the same thing everywhere. Any regime that's ever tried to change, they get hit. And so I was right about that assessment. And it led me to explore the Federal Reserve. And there was a day where we were meeting with our congressman, our representative, and this huge group. It took place right by the school where I was teaching at the time. And I went there after work and I stood up and I spoke my piece. And I very briefly enlightened well, first of all, my Irish side of my family has been here since the Revolutionary War. They fought in it. And I told that
Right.
little story and I explained the Federal Reserve System. And Frank, those people's eyes, they're glossed over. They had no idea. They didn't understand. These people back then didn't understand how the monetary system was working at all. They had
Anthony,
no clue.
Anthony, I was on the right. I was a Limbaugh conservative in the late 90s and all through the first decade of the 2000s. I had no idea about this money printing,
Yeah,
taking us off the gold standard. The right never talked about it. All they said was, we are the greatest country in the history of the world. When we drop bombs, we also drop food to feed the people because we don't want to kill you. We want to do business with you, kind of a thing, right?
yeah,
And as the money printers kept printing up and the cost of living and the wage gap and all that stuff continued to sort of kind of separate between the oligarchs and average Americans. The right never knew how to deal with this. They didn't. This is why they were blindsided just a few years back when the corporation turned on them. I mean, imagine that for a moment. You spent 5, 6 decades defending the corporations in the name of freedom and liberty, and then they turn on you. They turn on
Yeah.
you. They shut down your free speech. They pump out the gay stuff. And, you know, the disease thing we had. I censor words here, got right. You know what I mean? The corporations turned on the right, and they became the biggest ally of the left. I mean, how stupid can you be? And this was my point when I left conservatism in 2013, because this kind of insisted defense of capitalism. Now, I'm not anti, you know, capital. I understand that the market is the best way to distribute, the economy and how to function it. But my question was to the right. When I was on the right, I said, well, what happens when the oligarchs monopolize a majority of the assets? What then? There's no
Yeah.
answer to that. There's never been an answer to that,
No,
Anthony.
well, yeah, and the thing is with the continuous money printing, them and their friends are able to use it first,
Yeah,
and of course, they're able to buy up more and more assets with that money. Meanwhile, your money, you're getting that money in flowing into the system, you're getting it last,
yeah,
and so by the time it gets to you, prices have gone up tremendously. You're just trying to survive. You can't buy assets to preserve your wealth. They're stealing from you. They've been stealing from us. This is worse than usury. Usury is a sin.
yeah,
This is worse than usury. This is straight theft. And the reason the right has never talked about it is because they know what's going on.
yeah.
And this is why we have this false left right paradigm here in the States. This is why I'm done with it. This is why I'm opening up the conversation to this whole idea of just Catholics not voting anymore. Okay. Or at least creating a Catholic party or something where we can vote. Because, and I know that there's the what's that party, Frank? That third party that's got a lot of the Catholic
Solidarity Party. Solidarity.
Solidarity Party. Yes, sir. Thank you. So the Solidarity Party has a lot of planks that I like, but they also have a lot of garbage in there that's still associated with liberalism. And we can't have any of that false
Yeah,
talk anymore. That
yeah,
has got to be done. This whole
yeah,
idea of like religious freedom, the church condemned that. It is condemned.
yeah, yeah. I know. I know. And now that religious freedom is taking us to war in the Middle East in the name of Protestant eschatology. That's why it's
Exactly.
outrageous. It's all outrageous. The whole thing is outrageous. It's infuriating. Listen, I pulled the lever for Trump. Mainly because I just saw the other side is so blatantly evil and satanic on the left. And there's part of me, like I said before, I still want to like Donald Trump. He's done some good things since he's gotten into office. There's been a sense of sanity brought back to the country, at least with the DEI and the gay stuff, the LGBT stuff, all that stuff. Even, well, we'll see about the economics and tariffs. That's kind of new to us here, and we're dealing with it. But at the end of the day, we need a president that's free. I critique guys like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh for working for, Ben Shapiro. And I believe they're tied. And I think you see it oftentimes. Listen, I love them as brother Catholics, right?
Yes.
And I respect them.
Yeah.
But you see it in their work sometimes how they're kind of stuck, working for it. Well, Ben, let's be honest, he's Jewish, right? And so I think that's a big problem. I think in the same manner, President Trump has to clean his cabinet out. I think it's got to be more well balanced. I'm not saying, that, it has to be an all Catholic cabinet, but it just seems to be he has people around him. When Mark Levin is showing up to the White House, pounding the table for war today, that is just downright scary. And when you look at the media, it's dominated by Zionists, not only the left wing media, but the right wing media. What most people don't realize on the right, our friends on the right, Turning Point USA, PragerU, Daily Caller, Daily Wire, Newsmax, Human Events, and a few others. They're all Zionist control, all of them.
Yes. Yes.
Where is the independent conservative media? Right? I don't remember what Breitbart was,
It
but my
doesn't
point is,
exist.
huh?
Doesn't exist. And I think if we
Yeah,
look at what Steve Bannon said, he said that Fox News should be investigated. And
yeah.
I think they should be.
Where is the alternative media giving you another perspective on this? It doesn't exist
Right.
on the left or the right. They've all
No,
been bought out, man.
no, I think the most you can say that in the three-letter agency, the big one, that the Praetorian Guard of the state. I think the most you can say is that when you see guys like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, whose fathers were associated with intelligence here in the United States, and who knows, maybe those guys are too. When you see them warning about the same things that we're talking about here, I think you've got some division going on there. And unfortunately, they seem to be the weaker part of that division. Uh, and I think they see some things that need to be. I'm not quite sure about Tucker. I don't want to speculate too much, and get off onto some kind of weird tangent. But it at least seems like that they are, you gotta put some things to rest sometimes, and I think certain things are the way they seem. I believe there really is a division, because if it was a false division, they wouldn't let Tucker or Jones continue to talk. They wouldn't allow the kind of hangouts that we're getting there from those guys, and they don't seem to just be limited hangouts. They really are talking some straight facts that are pretty big.
Yeah,
Uh, so I think there is a real division among them. I get the sense
yeah,
that unfortunately what this kind of Israeli fifth column is dominant.
yeah. It's hard to argue against that. I just don't know what's going on anymore. President Trump ran on keeping us out of wars. And listen, I understand these things are nuanced. I understand there's difficult decisions to be made. I understand there's real bad guys in the world. I get all of that, without a doubt. But it seems like this one just came up. It's like Israel got done flattening Gaza and off to the next venture on the other side they had to go. And it's the same rhetoric that was used or has been used for the past 20, 30 years. And the trust me, bro thing, it doesn't work with me anymore.
No,
Uh, and so, I don't know, Anthony, your final thoughts, my friend.
my final thoughts is that the state of Israel is suicidal, because nobody in their right mind uh, takes a chance on attacking Iran that way, with a 20 to 40% probability of everything escalating out of control
Yeah,
and all out nuclear war. They're a suicidal regime. They are more dangerous than Iran ever was. They're the primary danger. And it's terrifying to think that they have such control over our representatives. This is
it's
At
scary.
this point, this is uh what um taxation with no representation. And let's throw theft on there too at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, your anger, your outrage right now is the kind of outrage I've seen for the last 2 days. I've seen it on Twitter, I've seen it on Facebook. I've never seen a lot of right wingers this angry before and felt this betrayed over a war. This is different. People have been woken up. People are angry. I know President Trump has gone straight into defense mode, but it's going to be difficult for him to pull out of this one, I think. I mean, maybe if the economy starts booming second half of the year, I don't know. That doesn't look all that great, to be honest with you. Maybe he does something else to appease his right wing base at some point, gives them something to kind of buy them back. I don't know. But as of right now, it's been a rocky, what, 6 months, 5 months with President Trump. I can appreciate some of the things he did, but
I
this
don't
thing,
know. What would you? I don't appreciate anything he's done. What has he done? That's the thing. It's like every single promise that we were made has
yeah, I
not
know.
happened,
I
and we're
know.
getting the exact opposite.
Yeah, well, I guess
He's
for
just to
me,
make the point to those that don't
yeah,
understand what I'm saying.
yeah,
His domestic economic policy is over now. Okay,
I
any
know.
hope you had of him turning America around, that's done. Welcome to paying for another war through theft as the value of your money goes down.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess what I can appreciate, like I said earlier, is him taking down that LGBT stuff, the trans stuff, attacking that. Now, that could be
Yeah,
a step just to get us comfortable. I guess that's the thing that was overwhelming. And if Kamala would have won, we would have got that on steroids under her. We all would have been bombarded with that. At the same time, it's a Faustian bargain. I get it. Because if we get into another war now, all of a sudden, listen, it's been nonstop since the end of World War II. Americans are tired. And listen, and I go back to my point that I always say, Anthony, even if Iran are the bad guys, how sustainable is it that we continue to go all over the world and deal with all the bad guys on our own? We have
it's
30
not.
we have
Yeah,
37 trillion in debt.
yeah,
Apparently, his new big beautiful bill is going to add like 3 or 4 trillion more. We're up to 40. Another war. What's it going to take us? 45, 50 trillion dollars. And what happens to the prices of goods at home? Listen, me and my wife, we're having trouble affording food. It's insane what we're paying right now. The middle class is being crushed. My point is, if these guys are really bad, somebody else needs to step up. Americans have paid their price with the blood of their sons, and of course with their pocketbooks, as we are losing our middle class, Anthony. So there you go, right?
yeah, absolutely. I agree.
All right, my friends. Hey, listen, Anthony Arditti, check him out over at the Knights of Christendom. I join him there. We do a Catholic roundtable podcast over there, guys. It's a site that it's great, man. We got a few guys over there. Neil the Hammer, Connor joins us over there, and I think you'll like it. The Catholic content over there. Cover lots of news story as well too. I'll put a link in the description box. Once again, I want to thank my good friend Anthony for joining me today. This is Frank signing off for Frankly Speaking. Good night, everybody.